Did you know that unprocessed emotions could actually be sabotaging your blood sugar? I know, it sounds crazy, but it's true because our liver is actually the seat of unprocessed emotions, according to my guest today, Christy Nault. And our liver is actually one of the three major organs that regulate our blood sugar. And so if our liver is backed up, and it can't do its job of detoxifying, that's also a really important job of our liver. Detox is really this big buzzword now that we're hearing all about on Instagram and social media, and detox is really important because we are living in a world that is just filled with chemicals and toxins, and we're getting bombarded from every angle. And all these toxins, if we're not detoxifying, can actually drive insulin resistance and blood sugar issues as well. So we know detox is important. We know now expressing our emotions is important. However, detox is not the first step. And that is what I think a lot of people get wrong. And I'm learning this from Christy, that there's this really important order of operations that we need to do things in order to make sure we're not reabsorbing these toxins. And one of those things is focusing on our drainage pathways. And that's something that I really hadn't heard much about before I did this interview with her. So in this interview, we're going to dive into all these things: the order of operations, drainage, detox, liver, emotions, trauma, everything. It is such an incredible interview. You guys are going to love it. Welcome to the Unlock the Sugar Shackles podcast. My name is Danny. Thank you so much for being here today, for leaving reviews, for rating the show. It really is so helpful to help the show grow and for it to be put in front of more listeners. So I really, really appreciate it. My guest today is Christy Nault. I am so excited to bring you today's interview. As soon as we did this interview, I actually signed up for her group coaching program because I just want to learn every single thing that is in her brain so I can keep bringing you guys more information, but you are going to love everything that she talks about. It will blow your mind. So let me read you her bio. Christy Nault is the creator of the Quantum Fit Flow program. She's a women's root cause health practitioner, educator, hormone specialist, breathwork facilitator, and medicine woman. She has been working in the women's health and healing space since 2010, and it was her own health journey that led her to the transformative root cause healing approach that she uses with her clients. She has an amazingly incredible pain to purpose story. I cry in the episode. It's really, really moving, and I'm so excited for you to hear today's episode with Christy Nault. And just beware, this conversation was so long that I broke it up into two pieces. I feel like we could have talked for hours. And next week's episode is going to be all about parasites and microdosing, so we get really, really into it. I'm so excited for you to hear part one of the episode with Christy Nault. Christy, I am so excited to have this conversation. I have been scouring your Instagram page and I love every single thing you post. I want to share everything and I want to just crack open your brain and learn, absorb everything that you know in a very non-creepy way. So I'm so excited to welcome you to the Unlock the Sugar Shackles podcast.
Well, thank you so much. I'm so grateful to be here. It's so nice to finally connect face to face. And yeah, I'm really excited for this conversation.
Yes. So why don't you walk us a little bit through some of your story and how you got started doing what you're doing?
Beautiful. I would love to. Yeah, so I think like many people who do this work, we got here by necessity. And I feel like my story really started really early on, probably at 3 years old. And it's just been building and continuing ever since. So my brother has been the biggest influence and teacher on my journey, really. I come from a family with 3 children. I was the middle child. My brother was the oldest, and he was born super healthy. My parents describe him as just like the perfect first child. So fun, so charming, so athletic and smart and charismatic, and he was just incredible. And then when he was 7 years old, he was severely vaccine injured. And that really changed everything for our family. So the night of his doctor appointment, he came home and he started having really intense grand mal seizures. And it turned into 350 grand mal seizures a day. So like this, a lot of people are like, oh yeah, I'm familiar with seizures. Like my dog has seizures. And it wasn't like a little issue. This was a very big issue. So anyway, it really shifted our family's entire trajectory. I grew up, in a hospital setting. I grew up watching my brother very ill. And I always knew from a really young age that the system that was like leading our family did not have it right. It was really frustrating for me. And yeah, it was tough. My brother went through about 13 different brain surgeries. He lived most of his life with less than half a brain. And for me, a lot of this started as a young age, with a lot of the work that I talk about now revolving around the nervous system. But my parents were so occupied with my brother that I just, we learned these control tendencies. And so from the time I was really young, it was finding every single way that I could create control in a very chaotic and uncontrolled environment. So like severe debilitating perfectionism from the time I was really young, straight A++ student, like just needed to be perfect to take the pressure off of my parents so no one ever had to worry about me. And I really channeled all my energy into like school and sports and just being a perfect kid. And that really caught up to me. I reached burnout. I suffered from a lot of intense eating disorders throughout middle school, high school, and beyond. Severely anorexic, like led me nearly to my deathbed before. And there was just a lot. My brother's seizures, because there was just so much electricity flowing through his brain, it created a lot of behavioral issues. So there was a lot of violence in our home. And he was such an amazing person. This was not his fault, of course, but I grew up in an environment that to me was very unsafe, and that affected me my entire life moving forward. So into college years, a lot of self-sabotage, destruction, partying, drugs, like all of the things, that I think a lot of us have been through, just ways to like numb and control and dissociate. And my brother passed away in 2015. It was from a seizure. And there's so much more to his story that it would take, hours to share. But that was really my breaking point, that it was like the trauma of my brother's death that really initiated a lot of my physical health issues to a whole nother level. Prior to that, I had often dealt with anxiety and like OCD, depression, suicidal tendencies. And then after my brother passed away, everything developed into like severe debilitating endometriosis, chronic Lyme, and autoimmune conditions. And, the list goes on and on and on. And I found myself back at the doctor's office, back within the Western medical system. And I just knew like, this is not the path for me. I wasn't liking the answers that I received. I didn't know what I know now, but I knew that I had the power to heal my body. That's exactly what I did. And I just feel like it's truly my life's mission to share this information with other people. I feel like I have this soul contract with my brother, and it truly is like so much more than just a business. It truly is like deep from my heart. His story lights my fire every single day. So yeah, it was a lot. And it started off in the fitness industry. So in 2010, I have a 13-year background in personal training, Pilates training, and that just really evolved into the holistic health and healing and energy work and all of the things that that I do now. So yeah, I guess that's like a brief summary of how I got there.
Wow. That was such a beautiful pain to purpose story, and I'm here fighting back tears because I'm very empathetic, and I'm so sorry for what you went through with your brother. And yeah, it's really beautiful to see what you're doing with that and just the ripple effect that his story is having. And I'll be okay. I could never be a therapist. I'd be like crying with everybody. And I knew that about you because I read your story. It doesn't get easier. So yeah, and I was a speech therapist, and I worked with a lot of kids who were vaccine injured, and just to have people denying that exists is really hard.
It is.
Especially because it's written on the inserts, It's not, every medication, you look at a pill for something silly on the TV and they're listing all sorts of insane side effects on a commercial.
Like death
that's like
is a side effect.
Of like something that's going to fix a rash on your skin, and it's like the side effect is like shitting your pants and death and like all these crazy things. So why do we think that this can't have these effects? But that's not the point of this story. So you work a lot with, you talk about root cause healing, and I hear a lot of people throwing that out there, but it sounds like you're really going real deep, and I love that. And so can you start there and start explaining for us what that means and why that's important for our healing?
Absolutely. This is so important. So I feel like the group of women that I attract are health conscious women. I'm not really speaking to or attracting women who like are sitting on the couch eating Cheetos, right? Like I work with women who have been on this healing journey for probably over a decade, and people who are genuinely trying to do all the right things. The majority of the women that come into my programs have seen probably 2-3 plus naturopathic doctors, and I see that like the holistic space is really just an imitation of the conventional space, except, often in the holistic space, we're replacing pharmaceuticals with supplements. And that's not holistic healing. Like we're not going to get better by just treating the symptom. So a lot of women that come to me, they're like, I've spent my entire life savings getting all of these expensive functional lab tests. They get the results back. They find out they have, maybe mold toxicity or chronic Lyme or parasites or whatever it may be. And their doctor is just throwing them right into detox protocols. And that is an important part of the process, but we truly have to address, first and foremost, all of the reasons why our body became so hospitable to like parasites and overgrowths in the first place. Because we can go in and we can kill all we want, but if we're not addressing the why or the root causes of these symptoms, of these issues, we're literally never going to get better. So root cause is truly like rewinding, taking it back to the basics, understanding that there is an actual order of operations when it comes to root cause healing. And I love biohacking, like I love supplements, I love all the things, but we cannot biohack our way out of the foundations. And a lot of people are really missing this huge foundational medicine piece, which is, you talk a lot about this, from blood sugar and nutrition, right? And sunshine and optimizing our circadian rhythm and all of those things. Like we cannot get around poor sleep, mineral deficiencies, and nervous system is a huge piece of this as well. Mismanaged stress, unprocessed trauma, unprocessed emotions, and nervous system dysregulation. That is so foundational to this root cause journey. So when I'm speaking of root cause healing, I feel like, number one, it's not just treating the symptom that's presenting. It's not just, if we have candida, root cause healing is not just going on a candida cleanse. It's, rewinding and like figuring out all of the reasons that led us to this place of candida overgrowth in the first place and addressing those root causes. And then secondly, making sure we're following this proper order of operations. It always starts with really anchoring in the foundations, and that's physically, emotionally, energetically. Root cause healing is not just physical health. Like we genuinely have to take into account that we are emotional beings. We have to understand our emotional body and our light body. This can get, like, we can take this into a very spiritual conversation as well. And some people get turned off by this, but I feel like unless we are ready to truly dive into that aspect of our human essence, like we're never going to fully heal. We are physical, emotional, and spiritual beings, so root cause healing is addressing all of that.
Yeah, that's amazing. And so there's a post that you did that is coming to mind where you said like your cheeks turn red when you get embarrassed, and you feel butterflies in your stomach when, someone you have a crush on walks by, or like there's all these examples of how what you said, our emotional state undeniably affects our physical body. So I see this coming in that example that you're talking about with these how we can't ignore the emotions. Like, I could just sit here right now and think about something, and my heart is going to start racing, and cortisol is going to start pumping through my body. And then when we have a stress response, that is actually an expensive process for our body, right? Like, it drains. We know that when we're under a lot of stress, it drains us of minerals more often. It can open up our gut. We don't digest our food as well. So to think that our emotions don't have an effect on our body is just wrong, right? So exactly. I think that from your beautiful example, we can all get around to the fact that, think about biting into a lemon. What happens? Your mouth starts salivating. So your thoughts and emotional state are actually affecting processes in your body, right? So can you explain more of this order of operations and these foundations that you're talking about? Because it sounds like, ooh, I need to get these dialed in. What are these foundations, and what are these emotional ones as well? Because this is, I see so many people with POTS, and they have nervous system dysregulation, and a lot of people whose blood sugar keeps crashing all the time, and they have these types of issues. So I think this is going to be really helpful for people.
Yeah, exactly. Like I was saying, I do work with a lot of health conscious women that understand nutrition's important, movement's important, all the things that we understand in conventional health, or conventional wellness, I should say, are really important. And they'll always tell me I'm doing all the things and I'm not getting better. And you talk to them for 5 minutes just about their life, and you find out someone's in a really maybe chaotic, maybe emotionally abusive relationship, right? Or they have a lot of codependent tendencies or enmeshment within their family unit, or with friends and people that are literally sucking their life force energy and draining them. And we can't get around that. There's not a biohack. We can create more resilience in our nervous system and more capacity to deal with life stressors. We can never obviously delete stress in life, but we really have to, create boundaries. I always say leaky boundaries equals leaky gut. I'm sure we're going to really expand into the conversation of parasites today, because that's a huge part of the root cause process. But, there's a lot of parasitic energies, people mooching and leeching off of us, and I could go on, and maybe we should address that in a little bit. But we have to be so mindful of not just our physical environment, not just the possible mold exposures in our home, or the chemicals we're using in our house, but also our energetic environment, who we're spending time around. This all so deeply impacts our physiology. Nothing is separate. We shouldn't be having separate conversations about the physical body and mental health and then our emotions, because they are just so deeply interconnected. It's all part of one single human experience. So it's all so important. But to answer your question about what are the foundations, what does the root cause order of operations look like? So when I'm starting with people, and at this point, I worked for 13 years with women in a one-on-one capacity, and at this point, I really only work with people in my courses and group programs. And in my work, I really lead people through the order of operations, in the proper order, and we always start with foundations. Most people are attracted to me and want to work with me because they find me within my work of parasites, and once people learn about parasites, they want to parasite cleanse. Of course, when you find out we have these life force sucking beings creating so much chaos within our body, creating chronic illness, of course we want to get them out. And parasite cleansing is an important piece of the root cause healing journey, but we absolutely cannot start there. So with foundations, it really is, like you mentioned, supporting our mineral health. Our minerals are the spark plugs of our body, of our physical body, of our light body. Our minerals, we need to optimize our metabolism and our gut function, but we can't even do that without proper nourishment. So nutrient-dense eating, and for a lot of women that looks like, unlearning diet culture, years and decades of undernourishment. That's a really huge miss for women. People like me who've had a lot of history of disordered eating, unlearning things like veganism and plant-based eating that a lot of the wellness industry is trying to tell us is so healthy, and in actuality, it's making us so depleted. So it's eating enough, right? Eating enough, supporting our blood sugar, optimizing our mineral health, getting optimized sleep, getting optimized sun, like really utilizing our free medicine, which can be found in nature, and starting to understand the ins and outs of the nervous system. So this isn't going to mean that like we are going to heal the nervous system in this step 1 of foundations, because it's going to take these pieces that come later, like opening drainage pathways physically and emotionally, parasite cleansing, and so forth, to truly get our nervous system into its most resilient and healed state. But we do need to start to become aware of like these different states of our nervous system, and that is definitely foundational. To me, that also ties into the conversation of nourishing our pelvic floor and starting to understand pelvic floor health, because our pelvic floor truly is the root of our nervous system. If we think about it, you know, a lot of people are familiar with the vagus nerve. We understand it like connects from our brain down to our cervix, and a lot of women go through life you know, I know a little bit about your story, and it sounds like we're quite similar in like the type A, like super perfectionistic, wound up tendencies, and that's a lot of the women probably listening as well. And when we go through life like type Aing our way through everything and forcing our way through everything, it's like we're clenching our way through life. We're white knuckling our way through life. And when we're stressed, we naturally clench our pelvic floor. So when we are clenching those pelvic floor muscles, it's getting weaker and weaker. I always say if you were to go around and just like flex your bicep as tight as you could for days and days and days, it's not going to get stronger, right? By continuously flexing and clenching it, it's going to get really weak. That's what's happening within our pelvic floor, and it becomes so weak that we're becoming disconnected from that area, and that is our root. That is like the root of our being. And when our pelvic floor is clenched, when those muscles are clenched, it signals to our body that we're in a fight or flight state, we're in a sympathetic dominant state, and that's also releasing constant streams of stress hormones. So in the work that I do, I really tie in you know, our physiology, but also our structure, like our muscles and our pelvic floor and alignment, and then of course like the emotional and energetics and so forth. Within foundations, I feel like it's very important to also address the bio-individuality aspect of this all. This is when I really like to teach people muscle testing techniques, because as much as this information, we as humans, we all have, you know, similar needs. Foundations, we need to reduce our toxin load, we need to nourish ourselves like emotionally, spiritually, all of the things. And at the same time, like we all, I mean, you've been on this journey for a long time and understand that probably what you were doing 2 years ago isn't what's going to be working for you right now. And as we heal and shift and change, our constitution is constantly changing, so our needs are constantly changing as well. And we can see that within like the supplements that may support us versus the supplements that may like create more chaos in our body and deplete us, or like the foods, you know, we go through different phases sometimes with what foods support us and what foods may potentially trigger us. So really tuning into like the bio-individuality piece of it all, and understanding the language of our body. Our body does not speak in English. Our body speaks in symptoms and sensations, and our body's always trying to communicate with us. So to me, foundational health is starting to learn the language of our body, and tuning into our own biointelligence and wisdom, and trying to not outsource everything to everyone else. So foundations, you know, that's how I see it. It's, yeah.
Yeah, that's really good information, because we think about, I feel like I was thinking about my blood sugar mastery program, and that's really what we set people up with, is setting them up with the foundations. And so many things get better just from doing that, right? Because we can't build a house that's not on a solid foundation. And so when you start to nourish your body and you start to get in the minerals with your water instead of just flooding yourself with plain water all the time, and you start making your blood sugar graph a little bit more steady, and you like your body is also going to start naturally, gently detoxifying, because you're giving it more nutrients to do so, and you're just starting to feel this like life force come in again, and you're like, oh, I can feel really good. And so that sort of scratches this itch of people where they're like, oh my goodness, I didn't know that I could feel this good. And then they just want to learn more. I have so many people who take my program and then go on to keep like learning, keep studying. They're like, I'm doing this program now, I'm working with this person, I learned this, and like they just like their minds open and expand to, oh my goodness, I can feel so good. And then health is like layers of an onion, right? Like we peel off one layer, it's like, oh great, now I have this other thing that I get to work on. So many opportunities, right? So with parasites, we've mentioned a couple times, and I know that's what you work on. Should we talk about parasites or go into more about the nervous system, and what do you think should go first? Because I know you know the order of operations.
I think it's so tied together. Yeah, I guess let me finish explaining the order of operations. And I love everything you said, because when we're talking about things like parasite cleansing, which is a detox, detoxification is such an energy-driven process. So creating that foundation of like optimizing our cellular health and our mitochondria and our minerals is providing our body with the energy and the nourishment that our body needs to perform detoxification. I've been on this journey for so long, and I've been teaching about drainage and parasites, which I'll expand on shortly, for a really long time. And at the same time, I have like a 7-year history of being like strictly vegan. And I can tell you that even going through like the proper order of operations did not work for me when I was in such an undernourished state. It wasn't until I really started, prioritizing more mineral-rich animal foods and so forth, and eating enough, which is so key, that everything started working. So like anyone can go into a detox, and it does not mean that it's going to work for you. So establishing these foundations is so key. And then understanding, I guess, the difference between detoxification and drainage. A lot of people think like, oh, I'm just going to go on a 7-day juice cleanse, and like that's a great detox. And it's really not. Detoxification is a process that happens within our body. So if we're talking about parasites, the detox is just going in and killing the parasites. But drainage, which is the most important part, is said toxins or pathogens actually coming out of the body. So we need to have these open channels, these open detoxification or drainage pathways before we embark on any form of cleansing, especially parasite cleansing. Otherwise, we will get more sick and toxic. So I see nervous system tied into foundations. That's kind of like one thing for me. And then we continue the foundations forever and ever and ever. That never stops. And then we go into really thoroughly focusing on opening drainage pathways. So it's not that complicated. If we think about drainage, like first and foremost, are we pooping every day? Are we pooping fully eliminating, right? Like feeling actually satisfied, and are we going 1 to 3 times a day? A lot of people, especially women, are chronically constipated for a lot of both physical and emotional reasons. A lot of people literally like can't let shit go, and like that plays a big role in our ability to release physically as well. But opening our drainage pathways is really focusing on opening the elimination channel of our colon. So we optimize our ability to poop every single day, and really focusing on opening the pathway of the liver and the bile, which I really think we should expand on. We were talking about this just a little bit ago, really understanding and supporting the lymphatic system. Most people understand the lymphatic system in the beauty industry, and they think it's the lymph system is just about like making our face more contoured, but our lymphatic system is the largest circulatory system in our body. So if we think of our vascular system, right, that pumps our blood, we've got veins, we've got arteries that run like rivers and streams throughout our entire body. That's how our lymphatic system is also set up. We've got lymph vessels and so forth. And the difference between the vascular system and the lymph system is we don't have to think about our blood pumping, right? We've got a heart that pumps our blood all day long. We don't have to think about it. But our lymphatic system does not have an internal pump. So we actually have to learn ways to optimize this lymphatic movement, because as I was saying, our lymphatic system is made up primarily of water, or our lymph fluid is made up primarily of water. And we all know what happens when water is not in movement. When water is just sitting, it gets moldy, it gets mucky, it gets dirty and stinky and smelly, it collects bacteria, it attracts bugs, right? So it becomes like a toxic soup essentially. And that's what happens within our body with a lack of, well, just movement in general, but a lack of sluggish lymphatic system. So our lymphatic system is a really big drainage pathway. I think of it like the sewage system of the body. Like if you think of a sewage system in your house, we've got pipes that pump in clean water, and we've got pipes that, like when you flush the toilet, that takes out the waste. That's pretty similar to how our lymphatic system operates. So that is a big piece of opening drainage pathways, is learning all of the different techniques that we can do to optimize our lymph flow. And if I'm just like getting really basic here, it's not as complicated as it's always looking on Instagram. Yes, dry brushing and rebounding and that kind of stuff can be incredible, but understanding that diaphragmatic breathing, just understanding a proper diaphragmatic breath, when we breathe into our diaphragm, that's the number one thing that actually pumps and pushes our lymph fluid throughout our body. So rather than stress breathing into our chest most of the day, like most people have really shallow breathing, it's making sure we're taking those big, beautiful diaphragmatic breaths, and that alone will help move our lymph fluid and just movement and exercise. So yes, a lot of those other things are important, but if we're talking foundations again, right? Like, sitting 23 and a half hours a day and then just thinking like dry brushing before your shower is going to fix your lymph system, like that's just not how it works. We need to take it to the foundations of learning how to breathe properly and moving our body consistently. And so our lymph system is a big drainage channel. And then, our lungs are a drainage pathway. I'm a breathwork facilitator as well. And I love using breath work not only to open our emotional drainage, but like our lungs are an incredible way that we can detox. Our brain has its own lymphatic system within our brain called the glymphatic system, so that's really important to keep draining. Obviously, our skin, people understand. I always say you have over 5 million opportunities to detox every day, and that's through each and every pore of our skin. So, peeing, pooping, sweating, and then supporting the liver, supporting the lymph is so, so, so important prior to embarking, like I said, on any type of detox, and especially a parasite cleanse. Otherwise, it's just, going to make you more sick and toxic.
Yeah. So how do you know when you've sort of achieved the drainage? Like, is it just, okay, I'm going to the bathroom several times a day and like you have these practices in place, or is there a way to know?
I think that, I don't want to say there's a way to know because we're all on such different journeys. I would love to say once you're consistently going to the bathroom, more than once a day, that would be amazing. Mm-hmm. The problem is a lot of women are actually constipated because the parasites are creating physical blockages within our colon and bowels. So, sometimes I do need to allow women to proceed into the parasite cleansing step, which comes after drainage. And they're not pooping, 1 to 3 times a day. But we need to make sure we're utilizing tools like, coffee enemas and bowel moving support, extra magnesium and supplements and colonics if, people want to do that. But coffee enemas are, in my opinion, one of the most incredible medicines available to us, like literally ever. Coffee enemas help open up every single drainage pathway. So they help open up the colon drainage, but it does so much more. Coffee enemas are actually used more than anything to heal and regenerate the liver and the bile. So the coffee actually dilates the bile ducts, and it can help dump out all that old sludgy bile. That's where a lot of liver parasites live, within those bile ducts. So it can help start eliminating those liver flukes, which are liver parasites, even prior to parasite cleansing. But opening up that bile flow is so important for regulating blood sugar. A lot of the stuff you talk about, being able to even digest and assimilate the nutrients from the foods we're eating to break down fats and to break down proteins, right? So coffee enemas are my favorite tool in the toolbox. I truly believe that they saved my life. I say that with no exaggeration at all. My liver was just, I had a lot of liver and gallbladder issues. So nearly all people can tolerate coffee enemas, and there's ways that I teach this. I don't recommend people just like going out and doing them without having the information first. I teach coffee enemas as what I call ceremonial coffee enemas. So not only are we like opening that physical drainage, but I teach people how to set it up to really set intentions and learn how to start purging some of that old, dense energy from our bodies too. So yes, coffee enemas are incredible. And so back to your question, I guess you're saying, how do you know if your drainage pathways are open? Can you break a sweat easily? That's a pretty good, like if you go into a sauna, can you actually sweat, or do you just, kind of get a little bit of sweat on your head, or like, can you sweat throughout your full body? So, just assessing your elimination patterns there. And I would say, like, I don't think it's a good idea to enter a parasite cleanse with at least a month of consistent coffee enemas, or at least a month of thorough focus on drainage pathway opening. Typically more than that is needed though.
Yeah, that's really helpful. And I haven't spoken this really publicly yet, but I also started doing coffee enemas last year, and they were completely life-changing for me. And it was really, it's just incredible. I saw so many liver flukes and so many stones, what I think were stones. Mm-hmm. And I never had a gallbladder attack. I never had issues. I mean, I have supplemented with different things in the past to support my fat digestion, but I didn't really feel like that was an issue of mine. But I did feel that was, it is just like really, really powerful what kind of comes out. And you're like, oh my goodness, yes. Better out than in. But the way I also took some organic acids tests, and it said my glutathione levels, which is our master antioxidant, my levels were 0. And coffee enemas increase your glutathione by like 600% or something like that. So, I had 0, so I was working my way up. And so you just feel so good and so clear after it, because you're just eliminating so much, and you are getting that support from the different components of the coffee. It's not just the caffeine. And then you are eliminating so much toxicity. And a good friend of mine, Tara Cooper, her handle is Wildly Primal on Instagram, but she always talks about nutrients in, toxins out. That's what health is, without talking about the emotional piece. But like, we need to get those nutrients in, but we also need to get the toxins out, because you can be eating the world's most nutrient-dense diet. You can have the most stable blood sugar. You could be eating so clean. But if your body is filled with parasites and toxins, you're not going to feel good.